The missing years in the Hebrew calendar refer to a chronological discrepancy between Talmudic chronologists for the destruction of the First Temple in 423 BCE and the modern secular dating for it in 587 BCE. Destruction of the First Temple. Both the Babylonian Chronicles and the Biblical Chronicles indicate that Nebuchadnezzar captured Jerusalem, but secular scholars have attempted to set a year when the event took place. The Babylonian Chronicles, which were published by Donald Wiseman in 1956, established that Nebuchadnezzar captured Jerusalem the first time on 2 Adar 597 BCE. The Chronicles, with the names of Jewish kings, is derived from British Museum cuneiform tablet with part of the Babylonian Chronicle. In the 7th year in the month Chislev, the king of Babylon assembled his army, and after he had invaded the land of Hatti, he laid siege to the city of Judah. On the 2nd day of the month of Adar he conquered the city and took the king prisoner. He installed in his place a king of his own choice, and after he had received rich tribute, he sent forth to Babylon. 2 Chronicles chapter 36 verses 6-10 says, 6 Against him came up Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon, and bound him in fetters, to carry him to Babylon. 7 Nebuchadnezzar also carried of the vessels of the house of the Lord to Babylon, and put them in his temple at Babylon. 8. And Jehoiachin his son reigned in his stead. 9 Jehoiachin was 8 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 3 months and 10 days in Jerusalem. 10 And at the return of the year King Nebuchadnezzar sent, and brought him to Babylon, with the goodly vessels of the house of the Lord, and made Zedekiah his brother king over Judah and Jerusalem. Before Wiseman's publication, R. Thiele had determined from the biblical texts that Nebuchadnezzar's initial capture of Jerusalem occurred in the spring of 597 BCE, while other scholars, including William F. Albright, more frequently dated the event to 598 BCE. From the date of the first siege at Jerusalem in about 597 BCE to the date of the destruction of the First Temple requires resort to biblical sources. 2 Chronicles chapter 36 verse 11 says, 11 Zedekiah was 21 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. There has been some debate as to when the second siege at Jerusalem took place, though there is no dispute that Jerusalem fell the second time in the summer month of Tammuz. Albright dates the end of Zedekiah's reign to 587 BCE, whereas Thiele offers 586 BCE. In that case, the year that Zedekiah came to the throne would be his first partial year. His first full year would be 596 BCE. And his 11th year, the year Jerusalem fell, would be 586 BCE. Since Judah's regnal years were counted from Tishri in autumn, this would place the end of his reign and the capture of Jerusalem in the summer of 586 BCE. The Babylonian Chronicles support the enumeration of Zedekiah's reign on a non-accession basis. Zedekiah's first year when he was installed by Nebuchadnezzar was therefore in 598–597 BCE according to Judah's Tishri-based calendar. The fall of Jerusalem in his 11th year would then have been in the summer of 587 BCE. The Babylonian Chronicles allow the fairly precise dating of the capture of Jehoiachin and the start of Zedekiah's reign, and also provide the accession year of Nebuchadnezzar's successor Amel-Marduk as 562–561 BCE, which was the 37th year of Jehoiachin's captivity according to 2 Kings chapter 25 verse 27. These Babylonian records related to Jehoiachin's reign are consistent with the fall of the city in 587 BCE. Dating in Seder Olim Rabbah. 2-year difference within the Hebrew calendar. The 2nd century CE rabbinic work Seder Olim Rabbah, which formed the basis of the year accounting of the Hebrew calendar, interpreted the prophecy of 70 weeks in Daniel chapter 9 verses 24–27 as referring to a period of 490 years. with her wick being interpreted as a period of 7 years, which would pass between the destruction of the First and Second Temple. This is used to date the destruction of the First Temple to 423 BCE, about 165 years after the current scholarly dating of the event. The discrepancy between these two dates is referred to as missing years. Today, Hebrew dating places the creation of the world near the end of year 1, Am, and afterwards the first year of Adam's life as year 2, Am. However, Seder Olam Rabbah shows that the Hebrew dating originally counted the first year of Adam's life as year 0, Am. This may mean that the Hebrew dating has shifted in the course of history such that traditional dating of ancient events appears 2 years earlier than the modern Hebrew dating would be. Rabbinic tradition says that the First Temple was destroyed in year 3338 Am and the Second Temple in year 3828 Am. If there was no calendar shift, the Common Era equivalents would be 423 BCE and 68 CE, respectively. If there was a calendar shift, the destructions would have taken place in our years 3339 and 3829 Am, or in 3340 and 3830 Am. And the Common Era equivalents would be 422 BCE and 69 CE, respectively, or 421 BCE and 70 CE. If there was no calendar shift, the length of the missing years period would be 163 years. If there was a calendar shift, the length of the missing years period would be 164 or 165 years. The missing years in Daniel. A popular explanation for the missing years suggests that the Jewish sages interpreted the prophecy in Daniel chapter 9 verses 24 to 27 as meaning that there would be 490 years from the destruction of the First Temple to the destruction of the Second Temple, and working backwards from the destruction of the Second Temple, wrongly dated the destruction of the First Temple. A variation on this argument states that the Jews deliberately altered the dating so that the true date of the Anointed One, mentioned in Daniel 9:25, would be hidden. Other apologists have countered with claims that the dating was indeed altered for one or another reason and should be understood as fable, not history. These explanations come from the ambiguous meaning of the word wick in Hebrew, which means a heptad, or a group of 7. The Hebrew word for wick is used to refer to periods of 7 days as well as 7 years. The understanding of this number as referring to 490 years can also be found in Seder Olam. Christians also interpreted these verses as years and connect them to Jesus. Although Rashi's interpretation is such that it upholds the tradition that the Anointed One in question is the Persian king Cyrus, highlighting discrepancies. Mistakes in the Hebrew or secular dating. If traditional dates are assumed to be based on the standard Hebrew calendar, then the differing traditional and modern secular dating of events cannot both be correct. Attempts to reconcile the two systems must show one or both to have errors. Missing reign lengths in the Hebrew dating. Secular scholars see the discrepancy between the traditional and secular date of the destruction of the First Temple arising as a result of Jewish sages missing out the reign lengths of several Persian kings during the Persian Empire's rule over Israel. Modern secular scholars tally 10 Persian kings whose combined reigns total 208 years. By contrast, ancient Jewish sages only mention 4 Persian kings totaling 52 years. The reigns of several Persian kings appear to be missing from the traditional calculations. Focus of the text being the operative word. Historians have long recognized that many texts, which accurately record history, often do so with a certain focus in mind. This would mean that the author did not find the missing Persian kings to be noteworthy, hence their absence from the text. Missing years in Jewish tradition are Azariah Dei Rossi in Merorainayim, was likely the first Jewish authority to claim that the traditional Hebrew dating is not historically precise regarding the years before the Second Temple. R. Nachman Krochmalin Guide to the Perplexed of Our Times points to the Greek name Antigonus mentioned in the beginning of Avot as proof that there must have been a longer period to account for this sign of Hellenic influence. He posits that certain books of the Bible such as Kohelet and Isaiah were written or redacted during this period. R. David Z. V. I. Hoffman points out that the Mishnah in Avot in describing the chain of tradition uses the plural accepted from them, even though the previous Mishnah only mentions one person. He posits that there must have been another Mishnah mentioning two sages that was later removed. It has been noted that the traditional account of Jewish history shows a discontinuity in the beginning of the 35th century. The account of Seder Olam Rabbah is complete only until this time. It has been postulated that this work was written to complement another historical work, about subsequent centuries until the time of Hadrian, which is no longer extant. It appears that Jewish dating systems only arose in the 35th century, so that precise historical records would naturally have existed only from that time onwards. The Minyan Shtarot system, used to date official Jewish documents, started in the year 3449. According to Lerman's thesis, the year count, from creation, was established around the same time. It has also been posited that certain calculations in the Talmud compute better according to the secular dating. Two possible harmonizations are proposed by modern rabbis. R. Shimon Schwab points to the words, "seal the words and close the book," in the Book of Daniel as a positive commandment to obscure the calculations for the Messiah mentioned within. However, R. Schwab later withdrew this suggestion once it became clear that the whole basis for the dating of the sabbatical and jubilee years would be undermined, labeling it a mere thought experiment. An alternative solution suggests that the sages were concerned with the acceptance of the Mishnah. There existed a rabbinical tradition that the year 4000 marked the close of the era of Torah. The authors of the Haggadah article propose that the sages therefore arranged the chronology so that the redaction of the Mishnah should coincide with that date and thus have a better chance of acceptance. Critiques of secular dating attempts have been made to reinterpret the historical evidence to agree with the rabbinic tradition. However, this approach to the discrepancy is problematic. The reinterpretation of the Greek, Babylonian and Persian sources that is required to support the traditional dating has been achieved only in parts and has not yet been achieved in its entirety. Similar problems face other attempts to revise secular dating, and mainstream scholarship rejects such approaches. Where and how the Gregorian or Julian calendric differential gets factored in remains another argument entirely. Excursus. Rabbinic tradition according to the Aramaic scroll of Antiochus. From the Second Temple's rebuilding till the 23rd year of the reign of Antiochus Eupator, son of Antiochus Epiphanes, who invaded Judea, there had transpired 213 years in total. Quoting verbatim from that ancient Aramaic record. Literal translation. In the 23rd year of his kingdom, in the 213th year of the rebuilding of this, God's house, he put his face to go up to Jerusalem. This time frame is taken in conjunction with another date in the Seleucid era counting mentioned by Josephus in his Antiquities of the Jews. Based on Josephus' record, Antiochus Eupator began his reign after his father's death in anno 149 of the Seleucid era. 23 years into Antiochus Eupator's reign would have then been anno 172 of the Seleucid era, or what was then 139 BCE. Since, according to the scroll of Antiochus, the Second Temple had already been standing 213 years. This means that the Second Temple was completed in anno 352 BCE, being what was then the 6th year of the reign of Darius the king, the year in which the king finished its building according to Ezra chapter 6 verse 15. Although this date of the temple's rebuilding largely disagrees with modern scholarship who base their chronologies upon the Babylonian Chronicles, and its rebuilding in 516 BCE, it is, nonetheless, held by religious Jewish circles as being accurate and reliable, since it is founded upon a tradition passed down generation after generation. The Babylonian Chronicles, however, are known to be lacking in certain regnal years ascribed to some kings, besides disagreeing in other places with the ancient Egyptian records outlining the regnal years of 8 successive Persian kings, preserved in the 3rd book of Manetho. In Jewish tradition, the Second Temple stood 420 years, meaning it was destroyed by Titus in the 2nd year of the reign of Vespasian, in 68 CE. For a discussion of subject, see Seder Olim Rabbah. The 2nd century Jewish chronicler wrote in Seder Olim Rabbah, Rabbi Yoza says, "The kingdom of Persia during the time of the temple lasted only 34 years. Many have misconstrued these words to mean that the author of Seder Olim Rabbah has contracted the entire Persian period of over 200 years into a supposed period of 34 years. According to Rashi, the 34-year Persian period must be understood in the context of their hegemony over Israel while the Second Temple stood, meaning 34 years is the precise time frame between the building of the Second Temple under Darius in 352 BCE and Alexander the Great's rise to power in 318 BCE, collected altogether as 34 years of Persian hegemony over Israel while the Temple stood. This time frame, therefore, does not signify the end of the dynasties in Persia, but rather of their rule and hegemony over Israel before Alexander the Great rose to power.